truly a heavy story, and yet it's an important one and may touch on extreme sensitivities to almost all of us here who know someone who's either committed suicide, a close friend, or family member. The International Day for the Prevention of Suicides was observed last week, and in the backdrop, reports emerged in Israel on the rise of suicides among children in the country. Now, one clinical psychologist from Bar-Ilan University highlighted that there's been a threefold increase in child suicides worldwide, and in recent years, most staggeringly, in Israel. In the last 4 years, 24 children under the age of 14 took their own lives. Experts argue that kids today are exposed to the world in unprecedented ways, mainly engaged in social media. This could be playing a role in the tragedies, but our producer, Mor Ellen, again, set out to determine just what the average Israeli thinks of the issue, either from personal experience with depressed youth or as it relates to their own loved ones. But here's our latest More from the Streets.
I would say I'm against it.
וואו, כן. My opinion, no.
בגדול אני נגד.
My intuition says that you don't need to give children pills or stuff like that.
Because just kids. They don't need to take medicine.
They need love, they need care. I mean, it's obvious, but I think that pills is not a thing that you should give to children.
אבל אם זה מרופא ואם זה מסודר ואם צריך ומתבקש.
שאימא שלי אמרה לי, היה אז בזמני, פדיחה אותה, אל תיקח רטלין. היום, אני אומר, זה שינה לי את החיים.
Children need to have time to develop their own ways to deal with it, and maybe it's for later on to decide to medicate something like depression in young kids.
What she said.
אני חושבת שעכשיו הם צריכים להרגיש קצת יותר טוב, אחרי כל הזמן שהם היו בבית והיו מכונסים בתוך עצמם, דווקא בדיוק ההפך.
Because they was alone for a long time at home.
Something about dopamine receivers and the way that we get a quick fix on all the satisfaction mode.
ילדים basically תמיד יהיו בדיכאון בעידן החדש של האינסטגרם ושל כל הפייק הזה. אתה לא יכול להיות מאושר שאתה רואה שתמיד לאחר יש יותר.
אני שומעת שככה זה גם בבתי ספר, התקשורת שלהם פחות טובה. אכן?
ואם ההורים ידעו לשמור על המשפחתיות גם אחרי הקורונה, וייהנו לגדל את הילדים שלהם, הילדים לא ייכנסו לדיכאון.
To get more into the subject, first of all, thanks to our producer, Mor Ellen, always getting us the thoughtful insights of people on streets on these pressing topics there. But we're joined now by Dr. Kamila Forkosh Lavan, a practicing psychologist coming to us from Jerusalem. And thanks, as always, Kamila, for being with us on, honestly, some of the more challenging topics we throw around on this show. So I appreciate your time with us. I want to get to some of the thoughts we gathered from people on the streets here. Maybe begin with that here. So much said about the attention on social media, on the new era that today's children are in here, an unprecedented exposure to the world, perhaps. Curious to see what you think about this. At least, I don't know if it's exposure to the world or just the facade of other people's lives as they portray them on social media. What are the main negative impacts, really, of the kids' exposure to social media today?
So the negative exposure, we know there's a lot of research is very, very high, actually. On one hand, it offers the opportunity to stay connected to relatives and to friends all over the globe, maybe have, job opportunities for older people, educational opportunities even for children, yeah? But at the same time, if not managed correctly or the understanding is still lacking of what it means and what are the pitfalls, yes, it can drag you in. And let's say if someone has already a little bit of a social anxiety, so now instead of facing that social anxiety more naturally by going out there and playing with other children, climbing a tree. Right now, they are very comfortably isolated, escaping the real world and thinking that they actually have friends when those friends are just virtual and non-existent.
I certainly feel that those challenges in my own household, obviously, I think like so many others, but in light of this new era, truly new era of tech and society for today's kids, are the therapeutic or treatment methods or methodology, is that likewise evolving with the times? Is it keeping up, in other words, the professionals?
Yeah. Of course it is. And I also want to touch on something that I'm going to answer it like a more complex way of your question. I also see, we talked about this already also before, of like Corona and how it was handled, and the fact that we were all closed in to such an extent without a way to hold the children and also actually older people. They got affected the most. We talked about this, and I've talked about this a lot also, and actually got a big backlash on this, that the effects that we will see past Corona will haunt us for years. And this is what we're seeing right now. For example, the collapse of the medical system, of the mental health system, where there isn't enough of people to actually give proper treatment. Yet with that being said, of course, there's a lot of research and a lot of opportunities, and we're learning a lot, but it takes us a minute to catch up, just because simply there aren't enough medical and mental health professionals that are trained to handle all of this.
And certainly even a smaller batch dealing with children in particular here. On these truly horrifying statistics in Israel, the topic of child suicide, this is hard to even discuss. How do the recent years, reports and statistics, how do they strike you? Is this in Israel in particular? Is this an issue for rising concern in the country?
Of course, right? We know the statistics. It's on the rise more and more as we all know this. Yes, and it's also shocking, like you're saying, just to even think of child suicide. Like what? You know what I mean? And one of the issues is also, again, going back to social media, is often there is this phenomenon of a copycat, meaning that someone else did it, so now it's more okay for me to do it. So like that's the way out. So maybe if someone is somewhere on a cusp, or maybe would be seeking help before, now they're thinking like, okay, it's okay to do suicide. Let me just finish with that. Sometimes not even realizing what that means and how permanent that is, going back to the computer games, for example. So I think that family education is very, very important on this, to start also from the kindergartens in schools, also involve the parents, educate. There's such a huge lack of education on what to do and what mental health means.
What about on this, we get a lot of thoughts from the street about the prescription of antidepressants, of medications. Are children overprescribed, or is there kind of no such thing as overtreating a child for depression? I mean, can they get enough attention?
So again, this question and the answer, of course, is very complex, because really it depends. Yes, there is one thing where sometimes there is like a flavor of the month, right, of what is being prescribed. So sometimes the children that don't need to be medicated and have other options are medicated. At the same time, often children that really, really do need the medication now are not medicated because of the stigma and the fear that maybe they don't need it. And what does that mean? So again, going back to education, to mental health education in the public, it's very important. And then you will feel more comfortable as a parent to go to a professional, maybe 2 professionals, 3 professionals, if you want to just check and make sure. And then you'll know already, like, okay, your child maybe needs medication for a little period of time while we're doing therapy, and now he's better and has the tools to handle everything. So now maybe he doesn't need the medication anymore. Usually it should be done in combination with therapy, just to be able to offer the tools as well.
Always value your time on our program here, Dr. Kamila Forkosh Lavan. Thanks for joining. Tough subject.
Thank you.